Shana Tova. Friends, we need to talk. We are currently in an age where instead of actually talking to each other, that is each person who may be an other to us because of their political views or their looks or their lifestyle or because of the person we think that they are, instead of talking to each other, we hide in our echo chambers and engage in affirmational dialogue, seeking out only those with whom we agree. In other words, when we talk to people who will agree with us, who will validate our beliefs and feelings. And too often, we cast out those with whom we disagree, choosing to block them out, physically, emotionally, or digitally. I recently had this situation on social media. I have a Facebook friend with whom I vehemently disagree. I think he's a lost cause, and he thinks I'm a lost cause. And the question I have to ask myself is this: is it worth having this conversation? And I'm not just referring to civil discourse. I mean, is it worth having any discourse? We are a people who engage in dialogue and debate. Some even say that arguing is the true national Jewish sport. Which is why we laugh so heartedly when the villagers of Anatevka argue whether he sold him a horse or a mule. But these days, is it still true that we can argue and still live in simple peace and harmony when the stakes are higher than whether you heard Laurel or Yanny? In the Talmud, there are two primary schools of thought, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. While those who came from those schools of thought almost never agreed with each other, they were more than just cordial. They were friendly to the point where their families even married each other. The Talmud shares this story. For 3 years, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai disagreed. One group said, the Jewish law agrees with us. And the other group said, the Jewish law agrees with us. And after 3 years of arguing, a voice came down from the heavens and said, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chaim hen. These and these are the words of the living God. But the Jewish law agrees with Hillel. You can imagine how this story would have played out in today's society. At some point, the supporters of one school of thought or another would make their way to their corners, get further and further away from each other, and instead of engaging in a discourse for the sake of something bigger than themselves, the dialogue would have ended with, you're a bigot and you're a traitor. This is a problem. We need to talk. And sometimes it's useful to have a framework for talking. So I would like to present 5 Jewish values that frame how we can engage in dialogue. Shema, listening. Derech eretz, common decency. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Kol Yisrael aravim zeh b'zeh. We are all responsible for one another. And when we engage in these values, we create Kihila Kadosha, a holy community. First, Shema, listen. In the postscript to the story I mentioned earlier, the one about the 3-year debate between Hillel and Shammai, the Talmud asks, okay, so these and these are the words of the living God. We're cool with that. But why is it that Hillel prevailed? It's because those from the school of Hillel were pleasant and patient. And not only did they teach their own perspective and that of Beit Shammai, they actually prioritized the teachings of Beit Shammai before their own. In other words, Hillel sought first to understand before being understood, as a way to underscore the value of listening, hearing, and respecting differing opinions. Kate Lauzar, a community builder and leader in New York, notes, the value of listening to others and feeling heard yourself is the very thing that promotes understanding, connection, deep engagement, and where required, even healing. Indeed, often the best way to diffuse a situation is to hear the other. Listen. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs teaches, listening is profoundly therapeutic, and it is also deeply spiritual. The good news about the Jewish people is that we're among the world's best speakers. The bad news is that we're also among the world's worst listeners. This has to change. Shema Yisrael, the great command, means listen, Israel. Second, derech eretz, literally the way of the world or common decency. We should give people the benefit of the doubt that people come into conversation with good intentions. After all, at the core of community is communication, and at the core of communication is decency. And part of that decency is respecting the outcome of a debate even when it doesn't go the way we desired. We know that if we seek respect and show respect, we will also earn respect. But to what end? The Talmud tells another story about Hillel. You see, Hillel was known to be an incredibly humble and patient teacher. So one day, these two guys made a bet with each other. The first guy who can get Hillel mad at them gets $20. It was zuzim, but for today's language, we'll say bucks. One tries to go up to him on a Friday afternoon right after he's gotten out of the shower and is getting ready for Shabbat and asks a ridiculous question. Hillel calmly answers him. The next week, the guy does the exact same thing, and Hillel responds in the same calm way. This goes on for months on end. And after a while, the guy finally confronts Hillel and says, I lost $20 because of you. And Hillel responds, I hope you lose lots of money because I won't lose my temper. Hillel is saying that it's not about your character, it's about my character. I've got my character, and I have to be aware of the times when I lose my character and make it all about their bad character. In other words, don't let a bully make you a bully. Don't let a nudnik make you a nudnik. Or in more modern terms, derech eretz, common decency, means be aware of mansplaining, interrupting others, and diversity. Third, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. This phrase comes from the Torah portion we will read on Yom Kippur afternoon, known as the Holiness Code. It says, you are not to hate your brother in your heart. You will surely reprimand your fellow, but not bear guilt because of them. You are not to avenge nor keep a grudge against one of your people. Therefore, you will love your neighbor, your fellow, as yourself. The Torah recognizes what happens when we don't talk. We bottle up our resentments, which are unleashed into the world as wrong acts. The Torah commentary Eitz Chaim notes this is one of the rare instances when the Torah seems to command feelings rather than behavior. And yet, it is an incredibly important feeling to maintain. Why? Because of our fourth value, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. Rabbi Melanie Aaron accurately observes, we live today in a time of intense individualism. We listen to our own playlist of music, read our own echo chamber news feeds, and this intense individualism can cause us to forget that we are a part of a larger community. And Yet our foundation as a people, as a community, is this idea of communal responsibility. Surely we will not agree on everything, but we do need to care for and about each other. So when we do engage in dialogue, try not to think in terms of victory or defeat, but rather think about what's best for the community as a whole. When we live by these first four values, Shema, listen, derech eretz, common decency, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, and Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, our shared communal responsibility to each other, we create our fifth value, a kihila kedosha, a holy community. Both the words community and communication come from the same Latin word, communis, meaning shared by all or many. In Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors, we see the spiritual value of communication as being central to community. When two sit and share words of Torah between them, the divine presence is between them. Beth Israel is surely a place where we share words of Torah within our community of communities, which is why we need to talk. Quoting community builder Kate Lauzar again, constructive controversy is vital to growth and relationship building. Issues swept under the rug can fester, ultimately damaging the fabric of the congregation in ways beyond the particular issue. We strengthen community by being in relationship with one another around the difficult topics. In short, dialogue builds trust and thickens and strengthens connections within our community. We need to talk, and we need to keep talking. Remember in that first story I shared about Hillel and Shammai? These two schools of thought who loved each other, who cared for each other, whose kids and students married each other, and yet they debated for 3 years on one topic. And yet they kept studying and debating and caring for each other. I will admit, this is a rather countercultural idea. Today's culture says, find your corner and stay there. Judaism says, find your corner of thought, but then listen to what someone else has to say. And if you need to, change your thought. As Rabbi Sachs notes, keep these values of dialogue in mind the next time you are tempted to walk away from a group of Jews that you think has offended you. We are each called on to make some effort, some gesture to listen to one another, to forgive one another, to stay together as an extended, almost infinitely varied family. So, how can we remain so countercultural even when seemingly no one else around us is open to these ideas? Because we have unity in what we're doing. We have values that we will uphold. We have a mandate of tikkun olam, repairing our broken world, even and especially when it bucks the trend of the majority. Some of this dialogue has already begun here at Beth Israel, starting with last year's congregational self-study and most recently with a series of post-Friday night service sessions facilitated by the clergy and experts in particular fields. And this year, in the religious school, dialogue will be our year-long curricular theme. Students will learn about these 5 values of dialogue in their classes, and it will begin on the first day and will continue throughout the year with monthly themes infused into each level of our programs, as well as our family education sessions, which will each feature age-appropriate tools for kids and their families to facilitate dialogue with each other in their own homes. As we enter 5779, we need to talk. May this be a year of talking and listening. May it be a year of conducting ourselves with common decency. May it be a year of loving our neighbors as ourselves. May it be a year of communal responsibility. And may we use these values to create a holy community so that we might have a good and sweet new year. Shana Tova.